Last month, Josh was sentenced to 12 and a half years in federal prison in connection with an earlier conviction on CP charges. Cousin Amy Duggar predicted that prison will be hell for Josh, and she's probably right. Sex offenders who prey on children are considered the lowest of the low in prison populations, and they're often targets of harassment and physical violence. And Josh will face some unique challenges once he's released from prison, as well. Many critics of the Duggar family were upset that Josh did not receive a longer sentence, but perhaps they can take some solace in the fact that he'll be under supervised release for a full 20 years after he gets out of jail. According to a new report from TMZ, Josh will not be allowed to have unsupervised contact with any minors during that time, including his own kids. Yes, Josh will not be allowed to spend time alone with any children of his who are still under the age of 18 at the time of his release. And he won't be permitted to be unsupervised in the presence of any minors for 2 decades thereafter. Any time that Josh spends with a minor must be supervised by his wife, his parents, or another adult who has been approved by the U.S. Probation Office. And that's not all. Josh will not be permitted to view adult video of any kind once he's released. Yes, even legal adult video featuring adult entertainers will be off limits to Josh for a full 20 years after his release. In fact, he'll have to receive permission from his parole officer before he's allowed to use the internet for any reason. So if Josh serves his full sentence, he'll be in his late 60s by the time his 2 decades of supervised release are over. Of course, given the fact that he's been a predator since his teens, the idea of Josh being released at all is probably rather frightening to his victims. Years before he was arrested for receiving and possessing CP, Josh accosted 5 young girls, 4 of whom were his sisters. His parents helped him to avoid prosecution, and he never suffered any consequences for his action. Of course, he also never received any sort of treatment or special supervision and was therefore able to claim more victims and ruin more lives. Thankfully, the U.S. government will now do what Josh's parents should have done and prevent him from claiming more victims. We have not received any new updates on Josh's life behind bars in the wake of his sentencing. His attorneys have vowed to continue their appeal efforts with the hope of attaining a new trial, at which time they will argue that investigators violated Josh's civil rights during their efforts to collect evidence against him. Josh's wife Anna Duggar is reportedly convinced that he's innocent and was framed by the Biden administration. In all likelihood, Josh will continue to maintain the lies that have served him well throughout his life. But fortunately, the government is not as easily fooled as Josh's wife and parents are.